Hello. Today I want to just talk a little bit about how to derive the relative price. The reason we want to think about this is because it is the relative price difference that is the reasons for why countries trade with each other, and it's also the reason for why trade is beneficial. Alright, so how do we actually find the relative price? Well, let's just take an example. Suppose we have a country that produces only two goods, A and B, and this country uses only two inputs, capital and labor, and the technology is given by the production functions, which are Cobb-Douglas and constant returns to scale, where QA is k to the power of 0.5, L to the power of 0.5, and QB is k to the power of 0.7, and L to the power of 0.3. Now, also suppose that some capital is specific to each industry, so that the KA and KB are given and constant. Because they are given and constant, we're going to add labor to each industry, and when you add a variable input to a fixed input, the production function will show that we have diminishing returns, so it has a very specific shape. So the shape of the production function is going to be given by what happens as you add more and more workers to industry A. The output of A will increase at a decreasing rate. It's going to look something like this. And of course the slope here is going to be equal to the marginal product of labor in the A industry. And again, we remember that the capital for this industry is fixed. Now the same is true for industry B. So if we add workers to the B industry, then output of B will increase at a decreasing rate. Again, the number of units of capital in this industry is fixed, and the slope of the production function is the marginal product of labor in the B industry. Once we have the two production functions, we realize that they are related to each other through the fact that one worker can only be in one industry at a time. So if we include a labor constraint, then we can draw the labor constraint like this. If we add our output axes, we have QA and QB over here. And if we include our production functions with the diminishing returns, you can see that different points on the labor constraint will give us different output levels of both A and B. And what we're tracing out here is the production possibilities frontier. So the production possibilities frontier is then given by this blue line, which has its normal concave shape. Now the PPF has a slope, of course, and the slope of the PPF is equal to the opportunity cost. So if I just redo the PPF here, we have that the slope here at this point is equal to the opportunity cost of good A in terms of good B. Now, the opportunity cost is actually equal to the marginal product of labor in the B industry divided by the marginal product of labor in the A industry. So you see that we could derive the opportunity cost using our production functions by just taking the derivative. For example, the marginal product of labor in the A industry would be equal to 0.5 K divided by L to the power of 0.5. That is, I took the derivative of QA with respect to L. We can now see that as we produce more and more of good A, that is, as output of QA increases, we can see that the opportunity cost of A would actually increase as well. That is, the slope of the PPFs gets steeper and steeper as we produce more and more of good A. All right, but if we remember that the slope of the PPF is just the opportunity cost, but it's also equal to the marginal rate of technical substitution, which is something that you might have used in a word or a term you've used in another course. But more importantly, it is also true that the opportunity cost of A is equal to the marginal cost of A. And of course, we know that the marginal cost curve is equal to the supply curve. So what we have here is that if I were to trace out the opportunity cost, as we produce more and more of QA, we will have the marginal cost of this good right here. It is going to be increasing, so it's going to look something like this. This will be the marginal cost curve for this A, or the opportunity cost for good A in terms of good B. Of course, the marginal cost or the opportunity cost in terms of A in terms of good B is also equal to the relative price of A. So what we have here, since we know that's equal to the supply curve, is we have just derived the supply curve. We have a supply curve, and we have arrived at it starting from our production functions. You can also see here that if I were to add a demand curve to this story, we would immediately find or be able to find what the equilibrium price and quantity would have been in this economy. So this is what we have. So now we have a relative price. We have derived a relative price for this country. And clearly, if we had another country and its production functions were different, and therefore its opportunity cost was different, and therefore its marginal cost was different, and therefore its relative price would have been different for any quantity of A. For example, maybe it will look something more like this. So the supply curve would be a lot flatter. If we added the same demand curve to this story, we could derive that a relative price would have been lower for this country than maybe it was for the first country. If I put them next to each other, we can maybe see that they're slightly different from each other. It is actually this difference that leads or is the reason for why these two countries should trade with each other. Because the first country would actually have an opportunity to purchase, consumers could purchase the good for a lower relative price from abroad, and that will give them an incentive to do so because it's cheaper. And of course, the producers in the second country could sell it in the first country at a higher price. So we have an incentive to both export, and if we had another, this is a partial equilibrium, so if we had another picture, we can see that the first country would have to export another good to the second country. All right, so now we have that the relative price has been determined. We can see that if the production functions are different, then the relative prices will be different, and therefore there is a reason for trade. And in a future, one could explore whether the countries will be better off or worse off from such trade. However, that is in a future, so thank you very much.